Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Family by Design. Today, Liz and I talk about one of the most important topics, I'll say one that people are really interested in, which is how do I navigate having a child that wants to have a cell phone? How do we go about doing this? And so Liz and I just really throw out some good wisdom, some practical advice that'll help you. We share a little bit of how we've done some things. And I believe you'll really be blessed, encouraged, and strengthened, and really know how to begin to navigate these things with your kids. So be encouraged and blessed as you listen. One of the things that we've had to deal with concerning our kids, our two oldest, and really now the third one, is navigating the whole cell phone thing. So when you and I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone until I was a senior in high school, and I was, half the kids probably didn't. I was maybe in the half that did have a cell phone.
Well, but
I don't think that you even had one.
No, I didn't have a cell phone
probably
until
not
college.
Till college. Yeah. So, but that's not the world we live in today. I mean, you have kids from the time they're 3, 4, 5 years old. They're on devices, and so then you have people that are extreme with things on both ends, to where they're like, you can't be on it at all. It's of the devil, blah, blah, blah. And then people that don't care at all. So this is a great question. We've had people ask us this question.
Yes.
And so we want to try to give some wisdom on this. So I'll just throw it to you. How do you navigate this? How do we navigate this? You, on a practical day-to-day basis, deal with this more than I do because I'm working. You work too, but you're at home definitely a lot more with them.
Right.
And so how do we navigate this?
Well, I think boundaries and a lot of communication. And here's the thing, actually, this is the biggest, I think, breakthrough that I personally have, is that the reason why we try to control or would make such legalistic, hardcore boundaries, you can't do this and that, is because we're scared of what it is they may or may not see. When in all reality, you can't always control what they see or what they don't see. This has been an age.
You saying even on phones?
Even on phones. And let me clarify.
Or devices in general.
In general. Let me clarify this. Age-old time, there were kids trying to sneak peeks at ladies in the dressing room. There were magazines. There's always been some sort of availability to look at things that we shouldn't look at.
Specifically, you're talking about pornography.
Pornography,
pornographic.
pornographic.
The issue with phones goes beyond just that.
Right.
To throw that out.
Yes.
But to your point, I think what you're saying is that there's always been... people's hearts could always be tempted with things, and They had access if they really wanted to.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that scares us, that scares you as a parent. And so to me, when I learned that the biggest preemptive thing that we can do is have an open door of communication, and we begin to navigate through things. So when something happens, let's talk about it. When an image pops up, or whenever, because sometimes you could be watching a normal, fine show that has been really good, and then all of a sudden,
two dudes are kissing.
Right.
And we're like, whoa, yeah.
Something pops up, but then that gives us opportunity in that moment to pause.
Okay, so let me stop you right here for a second. So there are some people, and I want you to get back to what you're going to say, but there are some people that would be listening right now and go, well, if you're watching anything or doing anything where any of that kind of stuff is coming before your children, you're not being a good parent. And so there are people that are thinking that, and so we'll talk about that. We'll fit that into this conversation here, but continue going on. So you're in that place. So something pops up that you weren't expecting. Whatever. In this instance, we're not talking about hardcore pornography.
Sure.
We're talking about things that don't hold to our values, commercials,
right?
Whatever, things like that. So then, how do you navigate that?
So we pause it and we begin to have a conversation. And
then we press play again. No.
I mean, sometimes, but that's also a very powerful thing in that moment too, is that depending upon what it is, if it's okay, I'm not bearing witness with this anymore, we're stopping altogether, then we stop.
Yeah.
And we don't turn it back on.
We don't violate what's going on the inside of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is a powerful moment for your children to know, oh, something came into my view. Now I have opportunity to keep receiving it or stop and move on.
And so what I think is that they're naive to think that if they shut their kids off from everything, that they're not going to be exposed to the things of the world.
Right.
Well, as soon as your kids get out of your house, they're going to be exposed to the things of the world.
And
so then,
probably at a very rapid and I want to kind of thing because I was so sheltered and I don't know what's even happening that I want to experience everything.
But for the most of the people, especially the ones that would listen to this podcast, that's not where they're at. They let their kids listen to things. They let them watch devices. And then when they get, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever age, and they start, their kids especially often will be like, when am I going to get a cell phone?
Mm-hmm.
Then they're posed with this question. Their friends have them. How do we navigate that? Because that's really the thing. It's really not there. So there needs to be boundaries with what they're watching at home. So you could get, like, for YouTube, you can get YouTube Kids, things like that, which you still even have to watch because there can be things. There's people that have infiltrated that and have done weird stuff. So you still have to pay attention to watch, and even some things that are quote kid friendly still have things in it that don't hold values.
Right.
I couldn't watch the Flintstones growing up. Well, we still did some, but because Fred always lied to Wilma, and my mom's like, you don't need to see an example. That's not a good example of a husband. So we have to pay attention to those kind of things. So setting boundaries and paying attention when they're on their devices is incredibly important because there's predators out there, there's garbage out there. So that's the thing, is like, is it right or wrong? You have to hear from the Lord, but you have to set boundaries if you're going to do it. Then you move into the conversation of the cell phone, and that's a whole nother thing because now they have a device that is not just in your home on Wi-Fi, but everywhere they go. If you allow them to take it with them, then now they have access to anything that's on the internet. And, you can put things on your phones. You can put things where notifications pop up or whatever, to your phone. Like those things are available out there. But I think it's you have to come down to what feels right for you, but then be in communication and talk to your children about it. So then going back to this thing, I'm just kind of trying to fill in some gaps here with this to try to pump out as much as we can quickly. When people would say things like, well, if you're going to be exposed to things like that, or that's going to happen, then you should just cut them off completely. Give us some thoughts or wisdom about somebody that might say that. Like, maybe I shouldn't let my kid have a cell phone at all, or they can't have one until they're 18, which basically means they're not under your authority anymore in your house. So how do you think about that? I mean, we think the same, but explain that.
Well, I think every kid is individualistic. So you have to
individual?
Is an individual. Yeah. So you can't base, and we always tell this with our kids, just because your brother got to do this at this age doesn't mean that you get to do it at this age, because you are you, and we understand your maturity level, we understand your personality, we understand, like, because some kids have more like I don't like addictive kind of personalities where they can get into something and then be so inundated by it that there is no
even
outside.
If it's not bad, could just be playing a game on it.
Yeah, right. So it's knowing your child, having a lot of communication, and then realizing that in these moments where they're transitioning from being a child to a teenager to adult, is that you're helping them.
This is the key right here.
You're teaching them how to navigate their freedom.
That's right.
And so this is where we're reflecting back onto them. And so we're not trying to control them.
So everyone needs to ask this question when it comes to cell phone and their kids. Are your children going to become adults? Yes. Are they going to get cell phones when they're older? Yes. I mean, basically guaranteed. I only know one grown person that doesn't have a cell phone. I only know one. And
I don't even know one.
You know them. But anyways, I only know that one person. The likelihood of your child getting, especially the day of technology, people use it for work and whatever. So if they're going to grow older, they're going to become adults, and they're going to get a cell phone, wouldn't you rather help them navigate that now instead of them navigating it without you? Because our job as parents is to shelter and protect and block, right? I mean, we don't just turn on, R-rated movies and say, watch it, kids, it's going to come, it's in the world anyways. Like, obviously we don't do stupid stuff like that. But so it is our job to protect, but it's also our job to help them step into freedom.
Right.
And so that is the bigger issue with parenting. It's parenting is not when they're 2 and 3 and 4, it's a series of no's. No, no, no. I told you no. Now you're going to get a spanking, right?
Right.
When they get older, it's really a series of helping them navigate whether it should be a yes or no.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
hard for some parents to swallow.
I think it is. It's been difficult for us,
Right.
and it's not been easy. But I'm not wanting to control my children. I'm wanting them to learn how to live free.
Right.
That's the goal, because when they are 100% free, if you want to say it that way, when they get out of your house, are they able to handle that? And if you haven't walked with them in anything, then no, they're not able to handle that. They're going to have to figure things out on their own. It wouldn't have been better if they learned if they had a secure parent who was secure enough to say, let me pull you into this conversation. Let's talk about this. So if your child is saying, I really want to have a phone, you could say, you know what? I think you having a phone, it's going to come, and it just needs to be next year. Let's have this conversation next year.
Right.
That might be fine. We've done that, and that's fine. They might be at the right age to where they can have a cell phone. So then I think you should say, instead of saying, well, you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. And it doesn't mean you can't have some ground rules or whatever.
Right.
But instead of being so hardcore of like, well, here's the rules, say, let's talk about what this looks like.
That's right.
Because your child, by the time they hit 12, our third is 12 now, and he's turning into a man. Like sometimes I hear him talking in the other room, and I'm like, I don't know if it's our second or third child, because they both have man voices now, right? They've hit puberty. And so sometimes I don't even know. So that what that means is that they're starting to think independently.
Right.
Are you going to help them think independently properly, or are you going to try to control them? Because if you're just going to control them, all you're going to do is push them away and then not be able to help them navigate
and they're not going to listen to
what they're going to end up doing at some point anyways, which is getting a phone.
Right. And if you are saying no and you're not having a conversation of why this is a no, or why this is a yes, or why do I feel like I need to protect you here, or then they're going to rebel and they're going to go do whatever it is that they want without you knowing it. And then now you've created this gap between you where you can't even have the conversation because all they feel like you're doing is trying to control them instead of you teaching them to lead them and guide them and help them navigate, the way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here's another thing I'll say too, is there are other elements involved in this that your kids just might need to understand. Phones, going back to the phones, that's kind of what we're talking about. They're not the cheapest thing in the world.
Right.
And you are not obligated to pay for cell phone service for your child.
That's right. It's a privilege.
It is absolutely a privilege.
Not
it doesn't
a right.
matter what their friends are doing. It doesn't matter their age. You have the right to say, we're actually just not going to do that. But make sure it's for the right reasons.
Not because you're scared.
Not because you're scared. If it's because, or I would say even because you're too cheap, but that's between you and, your budget and the Lord. But if it's an issue of budget or something you can't afford it, you just explain to your kids, I'm really sorry. I would let you have one. It's just not something that I can afford right now. So why don't we pray and ask the Lord about it? But don't be like, no, we're not. And it'd be a budget issue, and you'd be like, no, we're not going to do that. You don't need one of those. Explain to them what's going on, but definitely don't, just because you have a fear of the power of technology.
Them making
don't
the
just
wrong
shut them
choices.
off because of that. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
Because a lot of the things around cell phones were led because of what the world is telling us to do, or we're scared.
Yeah.
And those are neither way. That doesn't make you powerful in this situation. It
Right.
doesn't teach your child how to be powerful.
So for Arthur, we'll just give a quick example with this. For our third child, he is, he's almost 13, and so he will be at home with the youngest because of our schedule. With the church, that we leave them at home. Most days they're at home by themselves for a period of time, which is fine. We're able to navigate that with them. But we realized, okay, now the older two are working and doing different things, and so sometimes they're there and they didn't have a proper device. So we went and bought him a very cheap phone and put him on a very simple plan. And then we gave him guidelines. This phone isn't for you to take everywhere. This isn't for you to just sit on all day. This is for you to have so that you have a way to contact in an emergency, and you can still use it. He'll text. He's got a couple buddies or whatever they'll call and whatever, and that's fine. But but again, we navigated that situation for what we felt like was necessary. And if you were home all the time, and it's not that we're neglecting our kids, but just our life, our lifestyle. If you were just with them nonstop 24/7, then we probably wouldn't have done it, because he didn't really need one, other than when we're not there with them.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, there's all those kind of things that you can throw in there. Make the best decision for you and your family, but don't do things out of fear, and don't do things driven by culture.
Yeah.
And if your kid's going to have a cell phone at some point, and even if you can't afford it and your kid's like, oh, I want to help pay for it, it might not be a bad thing to let them take some responsibility for it. If they really want it and you have peace about it and you can help them navigate that. The point is help your kids grow. Don't try to keep them controlled because you're in fear about what's going to happen. With that being said, you need to realize that there's a lot of dangers with cell phones. There's a lot of stuff, and you can fill in the blanks, that's very accessible at their fingertips. You need to keep a close eye on it. You need to have conversations with them about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Family by Design. I pray that you were blessed as you listen to the word of the Lord for your life today. I want to encourage you to go on and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. If this ministry is blessing you, go to our website at www.whartonmen.org. There you can find more resources, and you can also consider partnering with this ministry. If you like what we're doing, we just pray that you would at least join us in prayer and consider supporting us financially as we take the gospel deep into the hearts of people. Gospel preached, hearts awakened, and nations reformed.